In 23 years at her job, she was never promoted once. She never earned more than $4,000 a year. She had no college savings, no rich relatives, no insider connections. By almost any measure, she was one of the most overlooked employees in her entire building. Her name was Anne Scheiber. She worked as a tax auditor for the IRS, and when she died at the age of 101, she left behind a fortune of over $22 million, built almost entirely from a $5,000 nest egg and 50 years of quiet, unglamorous decisions. Nobody at her office knew. Her own family didn't fully know until after she was gone. How does someone earning almost nothing, with no advantages at all, end up with a fortune most Wall Street professionals never come close to? The answer isn't luck. It's something she noticed at work, something hiding in plain sight on thousands of documents she read every single day. Anne Scheiber started working at 15 years old, just to help support her family. She eventually put herself through college and law school, a remarkable achievement for a woman in her era. And by 1920, she'd landed a job as an auditor at the Internal Revenue Service. For the next 23 years, she showed up. Every day. She was, by every account, excellent at her job. And yet, she was never once promoted. Historians who've studied her life generally attribute this to the discrimination women and Jewish employees commonly faced in American workplaces at the time. She retired in 1944 at age 51 on a modest government pension, having never earned more than $4,000 in a single year of her life. But here's what almost nobody at her office understood. For 23 years, Anne Scheiber wasn't just processing paperwork. She was reading the tax returns of some of the wealthiest people in America. Year after year, return after return. And she noticed something. A pattern repeated over and over on the returns of nearly every wealthy person she audited. The pattern was simple. Almost every wealthy person she reviewed owned stocks. Not lottery winnings. Not risky speculation. Ownership. Shares in real companies, held for years, quietly paying dividends. While she was auditing other people's fortunes for a government salary, she was building her own thesis about how wealth actually worked. It had nothing to do with a high income. Rich people, in her experience, generally weren't paid dramatically more per year than everyone else assumed. What set them apart was what they owned. When she retired with her modest $5,000 nest egg, she didn't put it in a savings account and call it done. She took what she'd learned from thousands of strangers' tax returns and applied it to her own life. She started buying stocks, carefully, patiently, and almost entirely on her own. What followed wasn't a dramatic story of overnight riches. It was 50 years of the same handful of decisions, repeated over and over. She bought shares in companies whose products she understood, household names in pharmaceuticals, food and beverage, and entertainment. She built a portfolio eventually spread across roughly 100 different stocks, rather than betting everything on one or two picks. And critically, when those companies paid her dividends, she didn't spend the money. She reinvested it, buying more shares, which then paid her more dividends, which she reinvested again. Decade after decade, that cycle repeated itself, quietly compounding in the background of an otherwise unremarkable life. She lived simply. Reportedly, she attended shareholder meetings, partly because they offered a free lunch. She wasn't chasing a lavish lifestyle. She was letting a system, the same system she'd watched wealthy families use for 23 years, work on her behalf, one dividend at a time. By the time she passed away in 1995, that quiet, unglamorous discipline had turned $5,000 into a portfolio widely reported to be worth more than $22 million. Here's what makes Anne Scheiber's story different from most get-rich stories you'll hear. There was no secret formula, no lucky break, and no insider information. There were exactly 3 things she did that are available to almost anyone watching this video right now. First, she owned assets instead of only earning a paycheck. A government salary alone was never going to make her wealthy. She understood that, and she used it instead to buy small pieces of ownership in real, productive companies. Second, she diversified. She didn't put her entire nest egg into one exciting stock and hope for the best. Spreading her investment across roughly 100 different companies meant that no single failure could wipe her out, while the collective growth of dozens of successful businesses over decades compounded steadily in her favor. Third, and this is the part most people skip, she reinvested her returns instead of spending them. Every dividend she didn't cash out and spend was a dividend that went on to earn more dividends of its own. That single habit, repeated for 50 years, did more of the work than any individual stock pick ever could. None of these three things required a six-figure salary. None of them required Wall Street connections. They required starting, even with a modest amount, and then simply not stopping for 5 decades. Anne Scheiber never became famous during her lifetime. She lived in a small, rent-controlled apartment. Almost nobody knew what she was quietly building until her will was read. Her story isn't really about becoming a millionaire. It's about what happens when an ordinary person with an ordinary income decides to own a small piece of the economy instead of only renting their time to it, and then simply keeps going year after year, long after it stops feeling exciting. You don't need her exact circumstances to apply her lesson. You need to start this month with whatever amount you can and let time do what it did for her. If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs a little patience today. Subscribe for more true stories from financial history that actually teach you something. I'll see you in the next one.